right? So you look at the three pillars of sustainability,
Yeah.
and you start there and say, what are the core material aspects that matter to me and our stakeholders, right, to move forward and ultimately succeed with these values in place.
Hey guys, welcome to the Wine, Whiskey and Weed Show. This is your host Sid Patel, and I'm here with Martin Reyes. He's the master of wine. He's been doing a lot of things, and we're just going to have a little chat about distribution, the current state of post-COVID, sustainability mainly, and we'll just dive into that. And Martin, could you please introduce our audience just what you've been doing, how you became master of wine, and what are you up to these days?
Sure. I've been in the business for about 20 years or so. My background has been in the business of wine as a buyer for retail on mainly off-premise distribution, importation a little bit, a lot of importation recently, and recently winemaking as well. But I also have a firm called Reyes Wine Group, which is a multidisciplinarian consultancy in the wine trade. Mm-hmm. So, and as you alluded to a minute ago, I am definitely shifting my trajectory as both a career, but also for my business into the resilience and sustainability parts of the wine industry.
Nice. So for sure, we'll deep dive into that, but let's touch base on distribution, right? So how have things changed? Like what kind of distribution channels are important these days, like direct to consumer, for example, right? So just give a little distribution landscape of new world we're living in, like let's say 2021 right now. Where do you see more movement?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that all of the things that were lessons for us that you have, I'm sure your audience and your guests have mentioned about, the importance of standing out, the importance of capturing the story, the importance of building relationships in the trade, the importance of marketing, the importance of really storytelling.
Yeah.
All of those things right now are even more important.
It got exposed, like relationships matter now.
And everyone's getting better at it. So the scary thing is if you feel like you've evolved a little bit in the past year to build your Instagram or to get that microphone or to get a better camera or whatever it is, there are companies out there who have also advanced light years ahead of where they were before. So to me, it is much more, even more crucial to wineries tend to underspend in marketing, in particular digital marketing. And if you do that, if you continue to do that right now, you will become obsolete or rather irrelevant at your own peril. So I do believe that across the board, it is very important to up the production value of your storytelling and up the connection value of your network.
I like that term, connection value.
Yeah.
True. It should be measured like your reputational value and those kind of things.
Right. Absolutely. So that's the lessons haven't really changed as much. Yeah. It's just that they have become much more essential, I believe, to stand out.
Nice. So for distributors, for the reps trying to knock doors, what are the retailers looking for these days? Like has empathy kicked in, kindness, or do you see those kind of things? Or people have become more direct and rude, like I don't have time, or what's going on in the behavior of the buyer? I
still think that right now we are we're still in the shift of buyers and their customers figuring out what the future is of what the trends tend to be, whether things like the seltzer, hard seltzer is tapering off or not, right? Yeah. Things like whether or not alternative packaging is taking off, which I believe it is, but in fits and starts, right? With cans and boxes and with on-premise with kegs as well. And so I think that the landscape is still evolving. Yeah. And so your question about how is the relationship with the retailers? I think that more than anything else, retailers would like for you to understand their perspective. And the perspective is the empathy of knowing the fact, hey, we just came out of a seismic shift, so I don't know what I don't know if my current inventory is good enough or adaptive enough to what has happened as consumers have shifted. They started buying more online. They started buying, either going less to restaurants or more to restaurants. Has their shift of spending up or down? Have they looked at other things that were on the margins, like sustainable, like organic, like natural? So I think that listening to the buyers is more important than ever, and finding out, doing a little bit of homework before you approach them and say, hey, I've got this new thing. Do you want it? Mm-hmm. It's always been a lesson for us to learn about what the buyers are looking for. But again, I think that lesson is now the importance of doing your due diligence is just ratcheted up.
True. It's also a good place to watch big brands. I think some big brands have come up with bold moves that they are going to be carbon free and blah, 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 or some things. I think the shift is happening. And it normally starts when a big player starts doing something with a package, like Gallo decides we do this and things of that nature. So I mean, personally speaking, I just see like movements like RTDs are hot, cocktail wine in cans are hot, but I don't know what's going on in the packaging side of things, the movement, what kind of packages are, have changed or what buyers are buying now, and sustainability wise, like what's moving, where can wineries adapt and move forward to become a sustainable winery?
So continuing along the theme of that the shift is occurring real time right now, right? Where we're seeing branches of companies, like you said, that are doing some bold and innovative things. What I think the short term, what you will see is that there's going to be an emphatic pushback around some of the lowest hanging fruit of sustainable packaging, which is lighter glass, is going to make a comeback.
Comeback?
Yes.
Because heavy is bad for the environment?
Heavy, exactly, on multiple levels.
So like that $30 nice deep Napa cab is bad for the environment?
On multiple levels.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly, on multiple levels. And so because glass is such a central part of our buying scheme, that is the area that we can attack. But
then how do you come around the perception? I'm sorry to interrupt, but just the perception of a consumer which thinks this is a good wine because it's nice bottle, nice packaged, nice heavy bottle. I normally would buy a heavy bottle just because it's heavy. That may be a good wine versus a 25 little light screw cap. Do you think, how can we educate consumers that that's just a package? Liquid is still doesn't affect because of the package.
So there's two answers. The first is, you mentioned that large companies are making bold moves. And large companies are making bold moves when it comes to the size and the lightening of their packaging. Mm-hmm. So when you have the larger ones moving in that direction, then you're able to move the needle of perception.
Sure.
Number one. Number two is there are wineries that are going to become more vocal. Some of them are now. Yep. But there are wineries that are becoming more vocal, and especially in places like Sonoma and Napa.
Meaning in marketing materials, writing about
everything. The conversation, the dialogue the discourse between producers, vintners, and their buyers is, hey, we moved to lighter glass because of, hey, we're doing this because of, and hey, the conversation of, it's not just about the thickness and the tallness and the punt, but we are doing what's most important is what's in the bottle. And we've always said that, but we've also been quick to spend money. I mean, the wine industry has been quick to spend money on heavier bottles for a long time. I believe that is one area that's going to shift over time, and it's already happening.
Got it.
Then also there's alternative packaging, of course. There's the showing up to a party with a can of wine is not going to be unusual anymore. We know that. If you dig in a little bit deeper, there's almost everything that's packaged out there is better than glass at varying degrees. Okay. Cans are better than glass in terms of the carbon footprint for a bunch of reasons we don't want to get into now. Bag-in-box is probably one of the best. Kegs, of course, is also. I mean, there's pros and cons for every single aspect. You can always push back and say, well, what about these bag-in-boxes have plastic? They've got cardboard. I thought plastic was bad, even if it's lighter. Yes, there's trade-offs. In every situation, there are trade-offs, but the most important point is the conversation's happening.
You're right.
About alternative packaging
like
within the scheme.
Like what are you contributing? How are you helping the climate change and sustainability?
Right. Well, there's 2 points: the sustainability, which is what I care about, but also, convenience. And going to the pool without glass it would be great to bring a 6-pack of Pinot Grigio or a rosé from Loire Valley or something like that. So let's remember, and I always tell myself this more than I tell anybody else. Most consumers don't really care that much about the choices they make when they buy wine. Most of them don't. So even though we're obsessed and collectively focused on these questions that are nuanced, in reality they're saying what is good value, what is easy, and what is convenient, and is the story something, maybe the story I want to gravitate towards or not. So we have a responsibility and a duty to make sure that the story carries through, and then we make the decisions for the good of the planet, but we also make the decisions that are still convenient, that are economic and attractive to the consumer. I'm coming at it from the kegs, bottling kegs, and moving into the restaurant is good for the environment, but in reality, it's also some aspect of convenience, of value, handling, of quality, of costs. And then the biggest one is return and reuse schemes. This is cutting edge stuff down the road, and how to get around
the beer bottles, right?
Well, not talking about
the 5 cents you get on the return the whole thing.
Well, exactly. The fact that glass is the good thing about glass, even though it's heavy and even though it's carbon footprint heavy, is that it requires it's almost endlessly recyclable. Right? It's neutral.
The handling cost is so heavy. Yes. Like retailers prefer that they lose 5 cents. And not have to worry about that whole recycling thing.
You're absolutely right. So the recycling system is broken in the United States. So we know that. If we had more time, we can dig into that. But the cullet, this is what the broken glass is called. That's what you call it, by the way.
Good to know.
That's a dad joke. That system is not, the cullet isn't recaptured to the degree that recycling is helping the environment. Most glass is not reused. What I'm suggesting is that there are companies out there that are trying to capture trying to make the system work where you bottle, you sell it to the consumer, and then you get it back from them. However you get it back from them is the obstacle, right? There's lots of obstacles in terms of size, weight, distance, shipping, washing, reusing, rebottling. There's all these things, but that's one of the areas that is a bright future of the wine business. Is glass is not going to disappear. It needs to change and become into a circular economy.
True.
Which I believe is going to take some time, but you heard it here first.
Yeah. So let's take this in an actionable strategy. If I'm a winery, I come to you as a consultant, and I want to be contributing to the environment, be more sustainable. Where do I start? Like, what are the questions you would ask me? How would you help me plan my strategy? Because I would go back and start doing that. And obviously it's not overnight. I'll look at my financial capacity, I'll look at my operational capacities, but how do you start going into that direction at least? Where do you start? What are the things? What is your 5-year plan? So
I think that there are plenty of businesses and consultants and strategists who can help wineries of all shapes and sizes develop their business plans without caring about this question, right? It's been done for generations.
Correct.
So right now, what a winery needs to do is say, okay, well, if I care about why should I care, first of all, about going deep into asking myself my business plan within the context of sustainability? Why should this matter? There are answers that are important answers about why it does matter on the sustainability front, not just for the environment, but also for the people, and also to sustain your business, right? So you look at the 3 pillars of sustainability, and you start there and say, and ask yourself, it's almost like if people want to get into it, it's almost like a material assessment. What are the core material aspects that matter to me and our stakeholders, right, to move forward and ultimately succeed with these values in place. So you create a strategy that's almost not just an entrepreneurial strategy, but a sustainability strategy.
Yeah.
You start looking at the very basic reality that sustainability should not be a luxury. It shouldn't be viewed as a luxury opportunity. There's upfront costs, but like solar panels, they amortize over time. It's maybe not a good example, but
yeah, I got the idea. Yeah,
so
it's an investment. You have to
there's an
see
investment up front, but then eventually, when you're talking about the fact that a winery has deep and heavy inputs,
it has to drive down in profits as well. I mean, it just can't be a cost. Otherwise, it's so hard to move in that direction.
Oh, absolutely. That's why it has to be part of that's why it has to be economically feasible.
Correct.
That's what I'm getting at, is that you do have to have a plan that's strategic,
Yeah.
not just buy a electric tractor
Yeah.
versus a gas powered because it's more sustainable. You have to understand what the costs are, how long
But
it will
is
last.
is it actually long-term net positive?
That is what people like Monarch tractors are saying. Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
there is a direction that in which you choose to make a decision that may be a little bit more expensive up front, but then that pays off in the future economically as well as environmentally. That's the key, right? 'Cause there's only so much goodwill people can have. You're not going to be able to.
Because ultimately, it boils down to the owner and self-awareness, and he has unless he or she decides that, okay, I'm going to be selfless now. Next 5 years, this is what my legacy is. Those kind of bigger questions. But if I just 5 years, I'm going to retire, doesn't matter. Let's just harvest the money, and it's such a bigger question. Like what I'm trying to say is a character question. It's not a business question, to my knowledge. It's like, okay, do I feel good? Can I sleep better because I'm producing less plastic?
What I'm suggesting is,
how can you train your mind to go
precisely? What I'm suggesting is that when you look closely at this question about the resilience of your business and the resilience of your land and the resilience of your people, they're all deeply interrelated, and you come away, when you really get into it, you come away with understanding that it does pay to be sustainable. It does pay to act in a sustainable manner, in a legitimately sustainable manner. I'm not talking about going after symbolic versions of sustainability, where you put solar panels and then you solarize your inefficiencies. No, I'm talking about looking clearly at the fact that as inputs of energy, inputs of water, inputs of costs of fertilizer, inputs of all these things that cost money to input to create a product like wine, if you become more efficient around that, think about that. Less inputs means you overall net in a net format, you spend less money.
Yeah.
And you do it if you do it for the myriad versions of right reasons, it is both sustainable for the planet. It is also sustainable for your business and your future, and it's also something that you end up feeling good about, almost as a side effect. It's the feeling good is actually the artifact that propels you to discover. Yeah. But then when you discover that, the continual discovery propels you to make the good business sense, to tighten up your efficiencies, to do more with less. Yeah. Right? That's what I'm talking about. It is a complete picture.
Yeah, you got to taste it once, and then once you start liking it, you're going to start doing more, I guess.
Precisely.
Right? Yeah.
Precisely. Absolutely. Even something simple like going lighter glass. The simplest thing you can do is buying cheaper glass, lighter glass, or buying something that's local, as opposed to from overseas. Right there, you end up saving money. Right? You just end up doing that, and if enough people end up buying a lighter glass, then you have a greater supply, and the whole thing works in that direction. So you end up saving however many dollars in glass. It's a very simple.
Yeah, in fact, the freight cost can go down as well because of the weight limits and all that.
Exactly, and then of course there's So there's multiple points at which you can. And also there's also marketing too. Yeah. You end up being able to initially first stand out and say, hey, I have changed this because of that. I moved away from foils. Yeah. I've stopped buying my winery. I stopped buying myself, Martin Reyes, with Peter Paul. We stopped buying foils and we started using a little bit of wax, but eventually we're going to go to no wax. That right there was 25 cents 25 cents per foil that I'm no longer spending. So less packaging, less waste, less carbon footprint. Yeah. right? Those are the kinds of things I'm talking about. There's much more one can do. And by the way, one of the fascinating things, Sid, that that maybe your listeners or audience are thinking about is, hey, we haven't really talked too much about agriculture or viticulture. You've been talking about packaging, blah, 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 blah. And that is precisely how I was thinking about it. And I'm glad we went there, because most of the inefficiencies and most of the impact that a winery can have and the wine industry can have is after the grapes have been received.
Yeah.
In terms of the carbon footprint, in terms of the nitrogen and phosphorus cycle, in terms of even water usage. There is, if you just look at carbon itself, greenhouse gas emissions, up to some numbers, up to 50% of the impact of that bottle that comes to you as a consumer, that footprint, most of that can be attributed, and by some measures, with packaging, with glass, with transport.
Yeah.
So most of the time when we talk about sustainability in the industry, we focus on what the vineyard's doing, what the vineyard manager is doing, the cover crops, the
50% after the bottle leaves the winery.
Exactly. So yeah, no, Sid, you I know we talked earlier, you said you didn't know much about this. You actually do, because you're like, I know this and I know that. So you're absolutely right that conversation, there's plenty of conversations right now happening around the viticultural aspect of sustainability and environmental stewardship. Not many yet are dealing with the very thing that you're talking about.
Which countries are leading the race? Like, I think personally, based on my knowledge, you can correct me, but New Zealand's doing a pretty good job. Like, which countries do you think are really believing this and stepping up, and governments supporting them?
I don't think that I feel like I can give you my opinions, but I don't think they're deeply grounded in study, in active study. I would say, New Zealand to me comes to mind, but then, because they have a lot of advantages. They're small. They have a very local feel. The entire Sustainable Wine Growing Alliance of New Zealand, I forget if that's what it's called, but they're collectively thinking about this as a whole. So I would say yes, that they seem to have that. The awareness is there. The idea that this is part of their business is there. Or let's say
in US, what's going on in Washington, Oregon, California, like who's doing a good job there?
So I was going to say that the scare of 2018 with the water in day zero for South Africa really woke them up. But no, I shouldn't say that woke them up, but it woke up the industry, even though there were leaders and heroes already there. So South Africa comes to mind. There's return and reuse bottle schemes in Loire, as well as there was something in Catalonia that was an experiment once. London with their return and reuse schemes as well. But in the US, probably the strongest area I think right now is probably, for the time being, Oregon has 20, I think, or so B Corp certified wineries. And Live is a flat out knockout a green certified credential.
So give us some names.
Also Napa Green too. Napa Green's coming on.
Those are the winery names?
No. These are certifying bodies. So Live, for instance, in Oregon, and B Corp certification is something that's outside the wine business, which takes a holistic view.
I did not know that.
Yeah, B Corp is
it's a type of the company entity. That's what I thought.
B Corp is a certification that bestows. The certification itself is a signal that that business is an ethically conscious, an environmentally aware company that is doing right by its stakeholders, by its people, by its neighbors, by its staff, and by its environment, and it's legally binding to some degree. Yeah. So a good example is Patagonia, right? The Patagonia is
the brand, right?
Right.
Yeah, amazing.
They are a B Corp certification. I think Ben and Jerry's is another one. And you see that credential. It's really hard to achieve.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for wineries to achieve. Right now in Napa, there's only one, maybe two, I think. But the first one, is Spotswood.
Spotswood Winery.
Spotswood Winery.
And some other names that other wineries can sort of just have a look at their websites and materials, what they're doing. Maybe it's a good source to learn. Like I normally learn from someone else who's doing better. Maybe it's a good starting point. Rather than reinventing the wheel, you can just see what they're doing. So just throw in some names which people can go and check out.
In Oregon, there's Brooks as well. And, and so California is a little bit behind when it comes to wineries. And frankly, I shouldn't say California, I should say Napa, because I tend to work and live more closely with Napa than other producers. But But Oregon itself is got the highest number of B Corp certified wineries of any state. And Brooks comes to mind, spots where there's those are the two that right now that to me stand out. But then there's other ways to. I would also say that going back into the agricultural side, or excuse me, the more regional side, Napa Green has fundamentally transformed from top to bottom, and with direction of the executive director there, Anna Britton, that is an area that years ago was not seen as one of the strongest environmentally, or rather sustainable certifications. It certainly was as good as any of the collective there, but they have since leaped ahead in upgrading the steps and the
they're
rigor,
setting up the standards,
the rigor
like
and the
taking
standards.
further and
Exactly.
further.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in the next few years you'll see that Napa is going to be one of them, the ones that come out. Yeah.
Great. So Martin, if you have any closing remarks for the industry, please feel free to talk to our audience and see how they can contribute to sustainability.
Well, I would say I'm thinking that we always talk about, when we talk about climate action, climate change and all these things, those are very real things, right? We're seeing them now. We are seeing floods and fires and everything. And there's a tendency for all of us to lead with that fear and to say, hey, we need to do this because the world is turning upside down. And truthfully, it is. But I would want to view this, for those who are listening and watching and saying, should I care about this? Well, I think the wine industry deserves to be loved enough where we want to protect that which we cherish. And wouldn't we want to all have the wines that we love these days, and the regions that we love, and the styles that we adore, and the epic and iconic wineries that have graced our cellars, and as buyers and distributors, those fine-tuned, chiseled, classic regions from France, from Italy, and from Spain, and from the US, don't they deserve to survive and to thrive the way that we've always wanted them to, and the way that we always loved them to? So I want to replace the conversation about fear. There's reason to be fearful, but to shift it and say, let's do right. Instead of doing well, let's do good. Let's choose with our dollars to buy and to support the wineries that are doing their part to save that which we cherish, our fine-tuned wine industry. That's my final message.
Great. So I'll add a little bit. So all importers and retail buyers out there, restaurants, your support, it all starts when a buyer starts saying, I'll buy this. So let's start there, guys. Thank you.